Glyphosate, an organophosphate herbicide, was introduced in the early 1970s. Roundup is one of the more commonly recognized names in the glyphosate family. Some crops are genetically engineered to resist glyphosate so that only the weeds are killed. While this strategy has been effective for weed control, it does increase farmers' dependency on this chemical product. Also, while considered safer than many herbicides, a number of studies have suggested there may be problems with it. An Ontario study, for example, found that within the families of farmers who used glyphosate, there were increased miscarriages and premature births.
They've incorporated Roundup-ready genes into a lot of the new strains of plants. I would say probably 75% of the soybeans grown in Ontario are Roundup ready, where you just go and just use glyphosate or whatever glyphosate equivalent you've got.
Biggest advancement made in modern times.
And probably the only clean fields you'll see this year are Roundup ready beans. All the rest have weeds coming up.
The basic agreement is if you're going to grow a soybean and grow a Roundup ready soybean, you have to sign an agreement saying, I'm going to buy this seed from you, I pay you the license fee for it, and I can't save it for seed. So you have to dispose of it all, and you have to go back and buy fresh seed from these guys every year. Whereas if you're not doing that, you can normally save soybeans and wheat, you can save those and replant them again next year.
Right.
It's the majority of the people use that system now. But it's a more expensive system, but it's a more convenient system. So there's a cost for the convenience. But
and I
then
think so many farmers farm part-time anymore. You know what I mean? They work in the plants or something. They need a system that's more convenient, that they only have to spray twice and not think about it anymore.
According to the Sierra Club of Canada, pesticides have been found in the bodies of pregnant women, amniotic fluid, the umbilical cord, and in mother's milk. A recent Quebec study found pesticides in 98.7% of children tested. 2,4-D was among the pesticides found. Although it has been banned for years, DDT and its metabolites are still detectable in the breast milk of Inuit women in the north, far from where it was originally applied. While it may be years before scientists fully understand the implications of this contamination, many people are beginning to question whether or not it may be contributing to cancer, reproductive problems, and other diseases.
I think that it may have brought it on earlier than it would have. You know, like I may have gotten it anyway, but I think that I probably wouldn't have gotten it at 39 without all the pesticides.
When you talk about all these girls that aren't able to get pregnant, would they be girls from around here that had been corn-to-tasseling as teenagers? Like I'm thinking about even our oldest, who had been trying for over a year to get pregnant and couldn't. And she worked in corn-to-tasseling.
You had prostate cancer, and that could do from the spraying that you were doing.
I had prostate cancer, and I was operated on, and that was, I'll tell you one thing, that would make you think, I wish I hadn't done any spraying.
Yes. My mother died at 57. This is my stepmother, but she died and she had cancer. And when people were talking so strong of this spray, she says, you're going to ruin it. You're going to ruin the whole world. Just that spray is going to kill you. And she believed that firmly on the day she died.
There are also concerns about the effects of pesticides on the broader environment.
And the spraying of the ditches is the other thing that you don't get in the city, that you get here.
They're trying to keep the weeds away from the fields.
Yeah, they'll put it in the paper that they're going to spray. They tell you when.
And what are they spraying, do you know?
I've
Weed
heard
killer.
2,4-D. 2,4-D, I believe. That's what they always used to say.
And they'll spray that now, and then they cut. They spray first, and then they cut after they've killed it. And they'll do that a couple of times, let's say, during the season.
We used to play along the ditch bank, and we used to watch the sprayers, and they were, they were unique in that was back in the 60s, and they were huge. And the way they would work was the spray would go out the back, and they would have jets in every direction. So literally everything got covered with the spray.
I think that in my 20s I started getting very aware of the environment I did. I was becoming very concerned, and I used to get quite upset. We used to rent, when we first lived there, we rented the 3.5 acres out. We did, and then one time I came home and I'd had the windows open and he was spraying, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know, so I talked to my husband then, and we we said, well, this is it, and we told him this is the last year, you're not using the field anymore.
A lot of it has to do with the wind during the staying process. If there's any type of a dominant wind, I mean even a 5-mile-an-hour wind, you will get migration. You will get migration because you're blowing it into the air. It's been aerated.
Because we are so concerned about it, we're thinking of turning this over into something that won't have crop. Simply because
when they do spray it,
we don't want the
and also you can tell, we know the minute they come out by the road, they'll start out by the road and then they'll work their way back, and you can smell it right away. As soon as it's strong, and the wind doesn't even have to be blowing in the direction. But
I was also part of the municipal government for a while, and some of the well testing that we did during that period of time was showing up chemicals like atrazine, lasso, those types of chemicals were making their way into the underwater streams, and were showing back up into the well water.
It would seem that in order to avoid the potential human health and environmental impacts related to the use of agricultural chemicals, it would make sense to simply discontinue their use. But it's not so straightforward. Farmers face not only potential health consequences from exposure to chemical agents, but also constant financial pressures. While large agribusiness can usually withstand the ups and downs of the market and unreliable growing conditions, and is able to produce larger amounts at a lower cost, the small family farm does not fare well under current economic conditions. Without sweeping systemic changes, many fear that the economic impact of reducing or eliminating agricultural chemicals would make it impossible for family farms to stay in business. As it is, the family farm as an institution appears to be an endangered species. There were more than twice as many farms in 1961 as there were in 2001. The farmers point to everything from global competition to big agribusiness for the decline. According to the National Farmers Union, in 2004, Canadian farmers suffered near-record losses, while agribusiness, which has swallowed up many of the smaller family farms, has enjoyed enormous profits.